As adults who experience relational trauma during childhood, we tend to really struggle with our relationships in our adult life. And it's not abnormal to be a more anxious attachment style. This means that we can go in one of two directions. We tend to move away from people, put our walls up, and sort of push people away as much as we can. Or we go in the opposite direction and we pull people in as close as we can possibly get them. We tend to be more codependent, and we get labeled with these feelings of neediness and overly expecting from the people around us. Both of these are responses to the trauma, to the experiences that we had when we were kids, and the adults and caretakers who were in our lives were supposed to be caring for us caused us to feel anxious in those relationships. We lacked an attunement and an ability to connect with the people closest to us who were supposed to make us feel safe. And this shows up in our adult lives in these ways as the way we protect ourselves. And it's often more subconscious than it is us choosing to show up this way. So as a trauma survivor who has been most of my life pretty codependent and that anxious attachment style, I don't go into my relationships thinking I need them to be my everything. I need them to show up and do everything for me. I need them to always be available for me. I actually typically go into the relationship feeling pretty grounded and okay and sure of myself. But then when things happen, as they naturally do in relationships, I can really take things personally. I can make big stories about why the person is doing what they're doing or how they're showing up or not showing up. And this will actually many times cause me to then tap into the other side of anxious attachment, which is, well, I'm not going to stick around and let them hurt me any further, so I'm going to walk away from this now before they have an opportunity to hurt me any further. So as you can see, one person who has experienced trauma doesn't necessarily just go in one direction or the other. If we're in anxious attachment, we can experience both sides of that. We can be more of a codependent, wanting more from people, and when they don't show up to give it to us in the way that we feel like we need it, we can flip over to the other side as a way to protect ourselves. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important in your recovery process to start identifying these patterns, because for myself and so many of the clients that I work with, we tend to create stories around this. We struggle a lot with loneliness and isolation and loss in our relationships and friendships as an adult. There's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of losing people and starting over again, losing those people, starting over again. And it can be this cycle that constantly makes us feel like we're unworthy of maintaining healthy relationships. When in reality, we just naturally struggle with this because we had these experiences in childhood. These are very normal responses to abnormal experiences in childhood. So bringing some normalcy to it. But at some point, most of us reach a rock bottom where we just feel like, I can't do this anymore. Like there's something that has to start changing so that I'm not constantly going through this pattern. And this is usually where someone will come to me. More often than not, people will come to me seeking help because they're losing a relationship, or they want to mend or heal or decide, like, what should I do with this relationship? It's in constant chaos and I just don't know what to do next. This is where we can start to build up more of a foundation of having tools and resources to help us navigate in a healthier way so that we're not in this constant state of chaos in our relationships. So here are the things that I find are deeply important to begin building in order to start creating healthier relationships that feel more sustainable and more grounded. The first thing is boundaries. We we need to start recognizing where we have none and we let other people get away with anything just so that we have people in our lives, so that we have connections, so that we don't feel so alone. We allow people to treat us any way that they want to, and we let them get away with that. So creating boundaries starts to help both us and them understand what our expectations are of each other, what is respectful, what we need in relationships, and to stick to those boundaries and recognize that I don't have to put up with anything just to have people in my life, because if I start creating healthier boundaries and putting these pieces into place, then I can start calling in people who will actually build and grow with me. The second part is communication. Communication is key to starting to heal this relationship wound that we carry with us. I want to tell you right now today that you have a right to ask for what you need in a relationship, and it doesn't always make you needy or codependent. I think there's a really blurry line there where, as trauma survivors, we know that we tend to be more needy, we know that we tend to be codependent, and we see ourselves as challenging in relationships. I think it helps to drop that and start to peel back the onion layers and try to identify because innately we weren't born this way. We were born who we authentically were, and then the trauma impacted who we became. So who were we before the trauma? We may have just innately been a human who really enjoys deep, authentic communication and relationship with people. And that's gotten blurred with this feeling of anxious attachment where we feel like we need it or we're going to die. So recognizing that you genuinely might be somebody who really craves deep, authentic relationships versus more surface level. You might be more of a quality over quantity, and that's okay. You're allowed to be that, and you're allowed to ask for what you need in relationships. The other piece is starting to identify our values in relationships, and this kind of goes hand in hand with communication. Like, we start to recognize, okay, these are the things that make me feel safe and loved and cared for in a relationship, and I'm not bad for asking for them, but I need to identify them so that when I start a new relationship, I can express to this person what it is that I need and desire in a relationship. And that person can decide for themselves, is this something I can do in this relationship and how I can show up for this person? And if it is for both, then it's a win-win. And we just start to create such a healthier foundation for that friendship or relationship to grow upon. And the last piece I'm going to talk about, and it is genuinely the thing that starts to move the dial in terms of our healing, is self-compassion. We have to find a way to have compassion for where we are right now in this moment and bring to the table an acceptance of, I am this way because of the experiences that I've had in my life. I don't innately want to be overly needy or overly codependent, but right now I'm starting to learn and understand how my trauma has impacted me, and I'm going to be gentle with myself as I navigate through this healing experience and I start to learn new tools of how to shift out of this. So identifying when you might have an inner critical parent kicking in and saying that you're too much, or you're asking for too much, or you're too needy. Recognizing when an inner critical parent pops in and says, stop spending so much time alone, you need to be out in the world. We need to find balance with all of these things and find a way to be compassionate for ourselves for where we are right now, and allow ourselves to feel the feelings that are coming up in that moment so that we can process through them. I love this topic so much. I have done so much work on myself in this area of my recovery. And I would say there's not a single client that I work with that does not struggle with their interpersonal relationships, and helping them to navigate through that and get to a point where they can start to call in healthier relationships and mend the ones that they have, or let go of what's no longer serving them. This is one of my absolute favorite things to work through with clients. So if this is showing up in your life and you're looking for extra support, I would love to talk with you. Please leave me a message, drop me a message, look to connect with me. You can find me on risingwarriorcollective.com or on Instagram at risingwarriorcollective. I am an open book, and my door is always open. I love to chat about this topic and all things related to trauma. So if you're looking for support, please don't hesitate to reach out.